The response is, again, to share our thoughts on how enrollment management can contribute to achieving equity goals and citing literature to support your premise. And so we'll be just giving our own perspectives based on our readings, but also our experiences within our respective fields in higher education.
So I worked in CAPS, so Counseling and Psychological Services. So it's a little bit different. But from all the readings this week, the one that stood out the most was that of, let's see, I'm trying to find the title of it. The one related to Angel Sanchez's journey. I think it was CURP, chapter 4. And I think you can kind of connect in the sense of how there's like this pathway for students who may have had different situations happen in their life. And so for him, he was incarcerated, and it led to him, transferring to the Valencia College and then going to UCF and graduating with a 4.0 and then attending law school. While I was a CAPS counselor, I had a couple students that were in a project in a group called Project Rebound. And it was really meant to help formerly incarcerated students. I connected with the department just out of curiosity, and they kind of let me know that they offer courses within the prisons or where the students are incarcerated, and really promote this sense of, hey, like when you're done serving your time, there's an opportunity for you to go to school. What you've done here can transfer, excuse me, and you can have a path, or you can have a different life for yourselves after you're done with your time here. And I think as far as like the equity aspect of that, I think it's taking what's already there and expanding it. I know for that program in particular, there's not a lot of programs and majors that are supported by that. And so the scope is limited. And I think that it'd be really great to take that idea and really expand on it. And also think about like other universities, or rather high schools, or other ways to engage the community to really have more pathways. And I definitely want to, pass the baton on that to Daisy. And I know, Anthony, you've both have worked in the Pathways program at Charles Drew. And I think it's like such an amazing concept. And so I think for that this week, that reading room stood out to me on how to increase equity.
When we were part of the discussion right now, and also the readings from this week, it reminded me of, we had like a board meeting with our department. So just a quick recap on the pipeline program. So our main goal is to expose pre-K to 12th grade students to STEM, with the hopes of them pursuing those careers after graduating high school. So we had one of our steering committee folks come up to us and say, hey, like we're looking at your data. We're seeing that not a lot of your kids who are graduating are becoming CDU students. So like, what's up with that? So it became a matter of, I guess, that ethics, right? Like, is our goal to bring students specifically to CDU to become, doctors, or, just encourage them to just graduate from high school and then go to college? Because, our school emphasizes medicine, but, our programs, they emphasize STEM. So all these kids may go to become, engineers, go to computer science, go to, not necessarily medicine, and even some outside of that. So like, if they don't want to do STEM, it's interesting, but they want to do art or something, that's okay. So I think that's where we're struggling at now, that sort of, I don't know if you can say like ethics or like marketing. Like, I think our main concern or main goal is to just encourage students. This is like an exploration, but they're not tied to a specific, field. They don't have to come to CDU if that is not what success means to them, right? If they want to go elsewhere, we're okay with that. So that is, at least for me as someone who works in that department, and also even myself, when I look back, as being a student, the freedom to choose and to explore, I think that it makes the program worthwhile, if that makes sense.
But as far as our prompt, also, like, what are our thoughts on enrollment management and how can they contribute to achieving equity goals? I think I'm really lucky to be in the place where I'm at right now, because I get to have the positionality to impact that. So for me right now, this year, we're choosing certain cohorts of students to nudge differently, to do different types of case management with, so that we can keep them or work on their retention. So I'm not so much looking at the new students, but I'm looking at how are we retaining our current students. So Right now, our groups for this year that we're paying closer attention to are students that are withdrawing from gateway courses. We want to learn more about why are they withdrawing. So we're making phone calls to them. We're asking our faculty and our chairs to pay greater attention to what's happening in their programs and why our students are withdrawing from these gateway courses. I also have financial aid and the academic advisors teaming up to do case management for students that are on financial aid warning. So financial aid will give us a list of who they are, and then the academic advisors have their case management plan to help make some phone calls and talk to the students and see what is happening with them academically, because they are really close, one semester away from losing financial aid. And so once they lose their financial aid, they lose their access to education. So that's something for us to pay really close attention to. And then for the first time, I think in my history at our college, I'm asking our Office of Student Life to do case management with students who come in needing basic needs support. So the students that are coming in for food pantry, what are the trends? Who's coming in every week? How do we know who might need more support than others? And what does that support look like? How are we encouraging them? How are we giving them the confidence? How are we supporting them through the semester and next semester to let our students know that we see them and we're here to support them? And what do they need to make it through academically? Also, our care reports. The students that were reported for care on our BIT team, they were just handled in the moment, but nobody was doing check-ins all semester long and into the next semester. So I'm asking for a stepped approach so that we're either stepping up the support that's needed or we're stepping down. And we have staff identified who will do the step up, high level, immediate support to counseling and our therapy services, or a step down approach where someone's just calling them maybe every 3 weeks to say, hey, I see you, how are you doing? What else do you need? So we're choosing those pockets of cohorts of students so that we can try to impact retention in a different way. The other thing that we're doing is looking at how we're giving our scholarship money away. Traditionally, it's new students where, hey, come to our school, we'll give you a scholarship. So we're trying to be more strategic now where, yes, that's for some, but what about where we're seeing our gaps in retention, which is from fall to fall semester? We know that that's problematic. So instead of giving a scholarship for one semester coming in, we're looking at, why don't we promise a scholarship for 2 years, not just one semester, 2 years if they stay in good standing. And I know a lot of institutions do that, but ours never did. It was a one semester, one and done type of thing. And so I'm really asking our teams to look a little bit different at what we're doing and to question why we've been doing it and to try new things. And so for me, enrollment management and achieving our equity goals isn't just about recruiting the students in, it's about keeping our students that we have enrolled and helping them to get to the finish line.
I wanted to speak briefly of one of the main sort of themes that we saw with several of our readings, which is on the area of ethics. And one of the chapter 29 of the handbook talked about how we should be incorporating ethical responsibility in our enrollment efforts, and especially when it comes to ensuring access to underserved populations. So CDU, as I've shared before, is absolutely not like the perfect institution. But I do think one of the recent changes that we made in regards to our role in the registrar's office was create and onboard a transfer credit articulation officer. We keep saying like we want to recruit students from community colleges. We want students to have some sort of exposure ready to higher education. But when they were doing that, initially, they were bringing in folks who have maybe been at a community college for 2 or 3 years, but the work they transfer over maybe is equivalent to 1 or maybe 2 semesters. And so it was increasingly frustrating for our students, but also for our financial aid office, who was like, well, they're going to be, they're no longer going to be eligible for as much aid, or, that these students are not being prepared for success. And so these students were going through their their funds. Some of them are in 4-year programs, even if they are transferring. And then now they're being asked to take out loans. And then, we know the stigma of loans, especially in communities of color. And so then they were either not taking loans out and not continuing their education, or they were taking a huge amount of loans out and maybe not completing their education. Now they're responsible for these payments. But one of the things we've done, again, to address that is this individual now comes in and she works with all of our transfer students before they even start with us. So they have a general idea of what courses, if you decide to come here, which one of your courses are going to be eligible for transfer credit. And it was a huge undertaking. I mean, she essentially built this, could have been an entire office, right? She built this broad herself. And it's been such a huge improvement for our students. We don't necessarily survey them the way we should be doing, but we have noticed a huge drop in the number of complaints that we're receiving. A huge drop in walk-ins and upset emails or phone calls because students know exactly where they're standing when they matriculate over. And so, when we talk about like, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it equitable? And then we're having conversations as a registrar's office. Again, we're not even in admissions, but understanding our role when it comes to strategic enrollment as a whole, and then ways that we can help improve the overall student experience in a way that we still have influence and control. So I'm proud of that.
So
Yeah, so kind of aligns. You just reminded me when I was a school counselor, and that was a big discussion that we had because, we need to be responsible, be transparent that, this dream of college education isn't going to, for some, it may change their life for the better, but for others, it's not going to solve all their problems. And that's something that we needed to be clear with our students. It's this is a journey, it's a commitment, it's a process. You could do 2 years and transfer and then get your bachelor's, but it's not going to guarantee your job. You're not going to win 6 figures, that mentality, especially for our first generation of students. That's the mentality that's ingrained for a lot of first gen college students that, as soon as I get my degree, I'm going to be making all this money and, it's going to change my life. And for some, that may be true, but it's a discussion that we have to sit down to see, let's look at the job market, maybe, what kind of career interests align with that? What is the most, I guess, which route do you want to take? Do you have the means to financially support a 4-year education, or the 2-year education, a more feasible route, that sort of thing. So I think that's also, I don't think there was a specific code of ethics, but it definitely was for counselors to be transparent and not to, make promises, right? Because it's not on us to do that. So it's just on us to inform. And I think that's something that maybe college recruiters should have, those standards that you're, in a sense, selling an education, selling a training, selling a product, but they need to be able to inform to the students what they're getting. So, what does that commitment look like in the long run?
It's an interesting conversation because the lack of ethics in advising is how I ended up in higher ed, because to Daisy's point, as a first-gen low-income student, my first question to the advisor was, what major makes the most money? And they told me, and I went to that major and hated all 4 years of it and would never get a job in that field. And that's how I ended up in higher ed. But to be part of enrollment management, I think a lot of people wrote about this in week 1 from the ethical side, is it important to get a student in and through, or is it important to get them in when it's a good fit for them, regardless of what their income is going to be? But is it a path that they're going to be fulfilled in, or are you just pointing them in a direction that you think might make sense based on, them saying they want to make a lot of money or something like that, right? There's zero regard for the long-term consequences of that, which I think is really sad. But I think to this week's prompt, I really liked the reading about the Student Experience Project. I think a lot of that resonated with me. I think that, no surprise to any of you at this point, but I think the focus on data and use of data to me is really powerful. And I was thinking a lot about Tina's comments last week about equity dashboards and things like that, because a lot of the readings and some of the stuff that and I'm trying to do, but facing resistance against, is really this idea of continuous improvement and making making data like accessible to where it's collaborative and it's not something that people are hiding if they're doing poorly. Faculty are doing poorly with a certain population of students. Like right now, I think we're at this place where people want to brush it under the rug. But I think if we can get to the point where it's out in the open for everybody all the time, then it becomes an effort of, hey, Tina, like we're both struggling in the same thing. Like, what can we do together? Can we learn together? Can we grow together? As opposed to what I see now, which is faculty have a perspective of they're doing great, and if something is wrong, it's the student's fault, right? Not the institution's fault. I think, Tina, you made a comment on my post about institutional performance gaps. I think that's something that I think we could lean into a lot more. There's also a comment about it being a collaborative effort with different units across campus, and I think that's something that I think should be like a focal point for like chancellors and provosts and presidents and high level leaders, because there's so many areas where this unit has an idea, but because of the policies of this unit, it can't be executed. And I think a lot of them are if everybody was on the same page about student success and equity, then it could be eliminated. I have like one really simple example in STEM and engineering and a lot of majors, but there's a lot of hidden costs, and we've talked about that in previous classes. And in engineering, it comes in the form of you register for a class, but then you have to buy this board or this kit or this tool or whatever, right? And those aren't things that you can get on your student bill because you have to buy them from wherever, tech company or Amazon or whatever. And so I asked the financial aid office to send me a list of students that were medium or high financial aid, and I was going to credit their accounts that we have set up in our program, and they use this account to buy like 3D prints and laser cut material and like that type of stuff. I'm like, let's just credit their accounts so that barrier goes away, right? Like, A, they have financial need. B, a lot of these students are unbanked, right? Like they don't even have bank accounts or credit cards or anything like that. And the pushback from financial aid was, if you do that, I have to count it as financial aid, and it could impact their grants and their scholarships and things like that. And it was just like such a frustrating conversation, because like this program that's willing to invest our money into student success is being told essentially, no, if you do that, that's X number of dollars less that student is going to get in financial aid. And it just seems like if there was, consensus from higher level leaders that like this is a focal point and this is something we truly do care about, then barriers like that could be eliminated.
I was thinking this while we've been talking, and like, can higher ed really be equitable, and can it really be ethical if the goal is to recruit students, because we rely on these students to fund the institution. So can we ethically really exist if we're relying on this money? And earlier Kai was talking, it's like ultimately the answer is money. It's all about money, and higher, whether it's financial aid, whether it's tuition, the institution relies on it. So I genuinely don't think that it can, unless we have that stability and are not relying on the students or we're trying to recruit.
I have maybe like an unpopular opinion about this, but like we've talked a lot in our cohort and in previous classes about like how much capitalism has influenced the direction of higher education. And I was reading this quote in the SCP article about just the fact of like creating more equity focused leaders. And I think that's, the 19 of us, I think that's what we are now and are going to be in the future. But I think there's a strategic way to do it where can you center students in an equitable way, also in a way that supports the university to meet their financial goals, because the financial goals will not go away. And I take like your example of the incarcerated student, right? Like that student was probably taking courses, it was probably federally or state funded while they were incarcerated, right? And then if they can get transfer credit and come to your university after the fact, like that's the right thing to do for that student, is setting them up for future success. And it also helps the university. So are there equitable decisions that support students and center students that also help the university meet their goals? And I think it's just a matter of like which one is first on the leaders list, right? Like, is it the students or is it the dollars? And I think if you can get people to focus on the students first and the dollars second, because they both need to be there at the end of the day, right? Like they're not, you don't have one with the other. So I think it's possible. I might be a little more optimistic, but I do think it's possible.
And I think what you just said reminded me of, in our book, they talk about balancing the mission with marketing. And when people start getting way on the other end of marketing and business, who's calling them on it? And how do we grab them back in towards mission? And came in timely. I'm glad I read this because I actually used that mission and marketing at a meeting today. Our campus is very unique in that we share it with the other two universities, right? And we also have Auraria Higher Education, so it's another state entity on the campus that is serving as the landlord, so to speak. And I'm having a huge ethical dilemma with some of the decisions that are being made, like on Fridays, charge the parking rate of $25 or whatever it is on Fridays, because they're there to serve. They want to bring in money from the sporting events. And so students who haven't registered their car don't even know, or prospective families that are coming in, they get hit with $25 to park. And so that's not ethical. It's definitely not mission. We didn't displace people off of Auraria campus and families to pay this amount of parking and to make money in this way. So that's all about the marketing and the business aspect. It has nothing to do with the mission. So what we're reading and what we're learning today, you all, I'm telling you, hold on to it in whatever places you're at, whatever tables you're at, because it's real and it'll pop up eventually. And it was just nice that I was able to say, here's an example. This is mission versus marketing, and shame on them. How unethical.